For countless generations, I have sustained life. I have gathered the rain, stored the waters, sheltered the salmon of knowledge, the mountain hare, the freshwater pearl mussel, and the curlew, shaped the peoples of the sperns. I am not merely land. I am not merely property. I am not a resource to be consumed. I am a living entity. Every day at the Public Inquiry, people speak about the sperns, consultants speak, barristers speak, experts speak, campaigners speak, government departments speak, but the mountains themselves never get to speak. Perhaps this is one way of letting them have a voice. So on to today's events. Topic-wise, we're still firmly in the territory of blasting, radon, norm, public health and EMF. Now, for those who for some extraordinary reason may be completely unfamiliar with these terms, and why on earth would you be unless you were forced to become acquainted with them because of the prospect of a toxic gold mine opening on your doorstep? Here's a quick guide. Blasting. Whether blasting could release dust, contaminants, or affect groundwater, not much explanation needed there. Most of us are already rather more familiar with blasting than we'd ever have wished, given our post-conflict history. Radon, the naturally occurring radioactive gas that can be released from certain rocks and soils. Again, radon isn't exactly a new concept around here. In fact, most new houses in Tyrone have to be fitted with radon barriers because of the naturally high levels found in parts of the country. Norm, naturally occurring radioactive material. In other words, the radioactive minerals that are naturally present within the rock itself, and whether mining, processing, waste rock or tailings could concentrate or expose them. Now, this one was completely new to me. I suspect it will be to most people as well. It's one of those terms that sounds like it should describe something perfectly ordinary, normal even, but in reality it's anything but. And then, of course, we come to public health. The potential health implications arising from all of the above, including air quality, dust, water contamination and radiation exposure. And finally, to complete the collection, there's EMF, electromagnetic fields, largely associated with the power lines and electrical infrastructure needed to support the proposed mine. Mix all of those ingredients together, and lo and behold, you have the menu for our final day before the inquiry broke for its summer recess. It certainly felt like a bit like the last day at school, as we filed out of the hearing room that afternoon. Except, somehow, discussions around such topics as these added a slightly sobering overtone to any sense of relief. Of particular note today was the number of expert witnesses representing Save Our Sperns. We heard from retired GP Dr. Alan Evans, Mr. Michael Mullen, consultant surgeon, and Leona Quigg, paediatric neurology. Joining them were some of our regular, frequent flyers who travel considerable distances time and again to support us. They included Linda Sullivan and Dr. Louise Taylor. Alongside them, of course, were all the usual suspects, the familiar faces who continued to turn up day after day, week after week, quietly demonstrating the remarkable commitment that has sustained this campaign for so long. Have I mentioned before that we do love a good acronym at the Public Inquiry? In fact, we love them so much that after a while it becomes something of a mystery what anyone is actually talking about. But that's all right, so long as you nod knowingly and give the impression you understand perfectly. Today's prize acronym has to go to ICNIRP, ICNIRP. Everyone in the room appeared to know exactly what it meant, everyone that is except me. Not to keep you in suspense, it stands for the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. What a mouthful. ICNIRP is an independent scientific body that publishes internationally recognised guidelines on safe exposure limits for non-ionizing radiation. That is, electromagnetic fields, EMFs, produced by things such as high voltage power lines, electricity substations, mobile phone masts, Wi-Fi, etc. The guidelines are designed to protect against established health effects such as tissue heating and nerve stimulation caused by strong electromagnetic fields. So have you got all of that now? So we now know that ICNIRP is the body that sets the exposure limits for the electromagnetic fields. And as you might imagine, the applicant argues that its infrastructure complies with ICNIRP, effectively saying the predicted EMF levels fall within the internationally accepted safety guidelines. Interestingly, Derry and Strabane Environmental Health did not have any concerns, saying that the proposed development complies with the guidelines. But whether those guidelines are sufficiently precautionary is a separate question, and Fidelma O'Kane was very quick to point out that reliance on guidelines is highly selective and offers no regulatory protection over a multi-decade timeline. That the EIA, another acronym, Environmental Impact Statement, relies on computer simulation, and that third parties would have liked to have seen a worst-case scenario rather than smoothed out averages, and that the studies are about adults and are not suitable for developing children. Dr. Evans explained how there had been a twofold increase in childhood leukemia, and that it is still a risk, even though it falls within the guidelines. Dr. Cromie, speaking on behalf of Public Health, said that they do accept the guidelines as being adequate to protect public health. Orbison, counsel for NIE, said that there wasn't any evidence that the existing 1,100 power lines that crisscross the AONB have had any impact, and that there would be no impact from our power line, which are 33 kilovolts. Later on, another third party wondered how many of the lines that were crisscrossing the AONB were 33 kilovolts, which I think carries a huge power supply. Niall McAleer pointed out that there was a well-known cancer cluster in the Mid-Ulster area, which Dr. Cromie from PHA was quick to refute. Commissioner McCreary then went on to ask a series of questions to Elvin, barrister for DFI, as to who is responsible for considering arsenic and lead within the application. DFI did not know. Followed by another question: who was responsible for radiology? DFI did not know. Later that morning, we heard from Leona Quigg, consultant paediatric neurology, who spoke movingly about the rising rates of Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD, in Northern Ireland, and the growing body of research examining associations between exposure to air pollution during pregnancy and early childhood and an increased prevalence of ASD, as well as greater severity of symptoms. Her evidence was that these exposures do not occur in isolation. Rather, they combine at critical stages of a child's development, creating what she described as a perfect storm of multiple environmental exposures. She referred to research from Denmark, which she suggested provided a useful comparison with Northern Ireland. One of the figures that really caught my attention was the prevalence of autism here. Northern Ireland is often quoted as having a rate of around 1 in 16 children, compared with the global average of around 1 in 100. She also noted that once children still waiting for an assessment are taken into account, the true figure here may be closer to 1 in 10. She suggested that this may indicate a population with a particular genetic susceptibility, meaning environmental factors could have an even greater significance. And that the economic impact is enormous too. She cited estimates that the lifetime healthcare cost for one autistic individual is around £1.5 million, and argued that, taken together, these costs exceed those associated with stroke, cancer and heart disease. Importantly, she stressed that the discussion should not be confined to autism alone. She said there is similarly compelling evidence linking air pollution with a range of other conditions, including cancer, respiratory diseases and metabolic disorders. Her closing message was simple but powerful. We are already in the midst of a childhood crisis. So would a development like this improve the situation or make it worse? In her view, the evidence needed to help answer that question already exists, and it is the evidence we should be paying attention to. And I'm going to leave it here for this evening because we've only managed to make it as far as 11:30 this morning. I'll pick it up again on Saturday evening when I'll finish today's proceedings and round up the week with an end of week review. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you all again soon.